We're on episode 6 of the Disruptive Love podcast, and I'm David Bennett.
And I'm Jonathan Bennett.
Our goal is to positively disrupt the bad in dating and relationships, so please join us by subscribing to this podcast. You can visit the website at disruptive.love and be sure to check us out on Twitter and Facebook at Disruptive Love, one word. Also, thanks to Joshua Wagner who's producing all this. We really appreciate everything he does. It looks great.
Today we're excited to have with us in the studio in Columbus, Ohio, Christy Goldstein, an author, columnist, and certified life, professional, and relationship coach. She recently published a great book called Dating While Disabled. It's a dating book for people with illness and or disability. I love the goal of the book, the way she described it, which is to give people with an illness hope and inspiration to continue in their quest to finding love. So welcome, Christy. We're glad to have you.
Good to be here.
Why don't you start by telling us a little more about yourself? I'm sure there's a lot more going on than just what I touched over quickly.
Yep, I'm a writer for Your Tango. I've also written for BuzzFeed, Thought Catalog, and Digital Romance Inc., and my own, of course, website of Christy Goldstein, thesexpert.com.
Hey, great. That whole sexpert thing, we're going to get to that a little later, so stay tuned for that. I know people like to hear that topic. Let's just start off with what inspired you to write this book, your personal story.
I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a connective tissue disorder that affects your collagen, which collagen is pretty much everything in your body, your joints, your bones, your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments. And so most people's collagen is like a rubber band. It pulls and then it snaps back. Mine continues to stretch until it eventually breaks. So I've had 59 surgeries correcting what my body does. So I decided to write this book because dating with an illness is not easy, and obviously there's no guidebook to show you how to do it, but I wanted to help to show what my experiences were and what has worked for me and what hasn't.
That's great, and we've met Christy before. We know her from the Columbus area, and I've never seen a book like this, and so we're really excited to have you on because as people know who have listened before, we like to challenge notions of love and relationships, and dating is difficult for a lot of people. I can't imagine what people who have a disability or a chronic illness go through. What are some of the prejudices that you've encountered or that people you've talked to have encountered, or maybe some of the challenges as well?
The biggest thing with invisible illnesses especially is that because we look healthy that we're not sick. And I've been accused of exaggerating my illness, that I was lying about surgeries, even though I had scars to prove the surgeries. It's just not easy to navigate when you're dealing with somebody else who has their own opinions on what you should be doing with your life. So if I go and run, that day, and then my body hurts the next day, there's not really a lot of compassion when it goes to that. So it's kind of hard to just deal with them seeing you be healthy that day, and then the next day you're in your bed not doing anything.
So you run, and then the next day they want to do something, and you can,
Yes.
and they give you a hard time about that.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
you ran yesterday. Okay, interesting.
Yes. So it's kind of, I try to explain to them, every day's different for me. Some days I'm great, some days not so much, and some days I'm in the hospital. It just depends on the day. So today it's raining in Columbus, so my body is probably at an 8 pain-wise. And that's how it always is when it rains or the weather fronts come through. So it's been fun with the rain.
Do you find that it's a lot of people would consider it a deal breaker in some capacity?
Some people do, and I completely respect that, because if you know you can't handle it, that's best for me, because I don't want to have to go years down the line and something happen and you bail out. So I'd rather know up front. So I know a lot of people just think that people should just be okay with somebody having an illness, but not everybody's made that way. So you just have to kind of deal with those people. It's kind of like red flags that you have with a healthy person. You have to deal with it when it comes to being disabled.
A topic I knew we'd get back to sex.
Yeah.
A, because it's a fun topic, and B, because I think it's a question that many people have about individuals who have a disability. I'll admit that's my question. There are probably wild stereotypes out there about, can a person have sex? Will they have the energy to do it? I mean, do you find that is a common concern?
For most people, not for me, energy-wise.
Well, I meant more like the
but-
stereotypes people have about disabled
I
people.
mean, it depends on what type of illness you have.
Okay.
With me, because I have dislocating joints, some people think that I can't do the crazy acrobatics, but that's what pillows are made for. So I use a lot of pillows. I use like yoga noodles and just position it the way that I need to be in that situation. So.
Now, did you get into this in your book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a lot of medications too that you, like supplements that you can take when it comes to energy or your sex drive. Because what people don't realize is that when you're on medication, that will affect your sex drive depending on what it is. And so you just need to contact your doctor and discuss what will change that and see what combination works for you.
That's great, because one of the things we got into last week on our podcast was that, you know, when you date, the best thing you can do is to treat people as humans. And so people, even with a disability, have a normal sex drive,
Yes.
wanna do it, some maybe even above normal. I mean, we don't have a problem with that either. I mean, you said you were a sexpert, so I mean, what are, I hate to keep on this topic. Actually, I don't hate to keep
enjoy
on it.
keeping on this
I find it a very interesting topic. So what are some other tips you would give to, let's say, to someone who is with a disabled individual or someone with a chronic illness, and how would you advise them to handle like the whole sex issue, like if the person's tired or just anything?
It depends on the situation, obviously, and what their illness is. But for the most part, you have to be conscious of what you're doing in the bedroom, because with me, I can dislocate a hip real easily, but you have to make sure that you're not positioning me in a way, or if I say it's time to switch positions, be mindful of that. I'm not doing it because I'm not enjoying it, I just can't do it any longer. So it just depends on, you know, the person. But if somebody's tired, it's kind of like a woman saying she has a headache, but she really doesn't. You know, sometimes you're tired that day, and sometimes you're really, really tired. You have to balance that, because for me, it's like when you're in a relationship with somebody, if you're the woman who's disabled and it's the man has to have sex. It's just one of those things.
Yes.
They have to have sex. So on your day that you're having a fatigue, but it's at a 2 versus a 6, have sex. Just do it. I know you're going to feel even more tired, but unfortunately, when it comes to men, if they do not have their penis occupied, they're going to go somewhere else.
No comment on any of that, but
You know it's true.
Oh,
well,
we
yeah,
do,
I
we
mean,
do.
So it sounds like me, you're advocating really for individuals who are disabled at whatever level to really just kind of take charge and do as best they can to perform in the same way.
Just because you have an illness. I mean, sex is a huge part of everybody's life, and if it's not, it should be. Because I mean,
Absolutely.
it helps with endorphins, and it helps your adrenaline. It helps a lot of things. So it helps your mood. So I mean, you just have to force yourself to do it. Trust me. Unless they're not giving you what you need, then there's another problem. But I mean, for the most part, an orgasm will make you feel a lot better.
Take notes here.
So there you have it. If you want, you know, have that orgasm, feel better, and that applies to all people, really.
Yes.
You know, we're definitely a fan of that kind of pain relief. We'll get off sex for just a second, and we might get back to it. But so let's say someone approaches you, they are disabled. What are your best tips to give them? You know, obviously you give those in the book, I'm sure, but give us a preview of the book. What would you advise someone who's disabled, wants to get into the dating game? Maybe they felt ashamed or worried about it. How would you deal with that?
The first thing, you have to learn to love and accept yourself. Pre-diagnosis, post-diagnosis. Because if you don't love yourself at all, and you don't love your illness, and you're frustrated with your illness, that comes off when you're dating people. And so that negative energy is just going to make you have negative results when it comes to that. So get over the fact that you have this illness. You can't change it. I don't see a cure for cancer anytime soon. So normally you're not going to have a cure for a chronic illness. So you have to learn how to deal with it. Once you've learned to accept it, I always recommend dating multiple people, because one person, like, they always get stuck on the finish line of getting married and having kids, and they're not enjoying the dating process. Dating should be fun. It should not be this headache of, you know, I need to get married. I'm 36 years old, 37, and I need to get married and have kids. Don't think of it that way. Think of it as finding your true partner. This is why the divorce rate is so high. Everybody's so quick to the finish line, and then you're divorced 4 years later. It's because you didn't take the time to get to know them. So always date multiple people.
You think that's particularly the case with maybe someone who's disabled who feels like they have to kind of get in that relationship as quickly as possible, or?
When it comes to a lot of the disabled people that I help, they have always told me that they are afraid to end up alone because who's going to take care of me?
That's kind of the line I was kind of thinking.
Stop thinking that way, because if you're just looking for a nurse, hire somebody, because your partner should not be your nurse. That is not their job. Their job is to love you, to protect you, and to honor you. And yes, some days they're going to be taking you to the doctor's appointments, but that can't be your whole relationship's focus, because if it is, your relationship won't last.
Well, remember, we met a girl when we were at Emory University.
Yeah.
And she had MS, I think it was MS. And she and her mom would go to the coffee shops and actually talk to guys. And we started to get to know both of them. And her mom pretty much admitted she was finding her a man because she wanted a husband to take care of her daughter when she was older and couldn't take care of herself. And I think at the time we were 21, 22, and obviously that's a big burden to think you have to bear. So for a guy or even a girl to hear that, to say, you know, I need a caregiver, marry me so that you can do that.
They're going to run.
Oh, yeah, especially, I mean, I give her credit. She told us very early. I guess it's better than you're at the altar and she says, oh, by the way, here's why I really got to know you. And it also felt, I think, kind of cheap as well, because it was just like randomly approaching people, getting to know them a little bit, telling them this. And then it was almost like, well, you didn't answer right, so we're going to go to the coffee shop and find 5 more guys until someone...
To me, you're cutting yourself short, because what is your love and worth to you? If you're just going to find somebody who answers the questions correctly and will do what you want them to, is that really love, or is that just compliance?
Well, it seems like at that point it's just compliance.
Yeah.
So when, we discussed this a little bit before we went live, but so the issue of when do you bring this up? You know, I know I've heard some people have the school of thought that they say, I reveal everything on the dating profile, so I don't waste people's time. Other people say, well...
Or their own time.
Or their own time, and they say otherwise. They say, well, no, because I know how people fall in love, and if they get to know you, they'll accept it more. What's your advice on time frames?
I mean, putting on your profile that you're looking for a serious relationship is completely different than saying, here are my illnesses. And so, I mean, there's a thing that I call TMI, which is too much illness.
Okay.
Too much illness. It's your relationship. If you call and say this is going to be the date, and here you show up, and then all you do is talk about your illness, what have you learned? Your illness is such a small part of who you are, and if you're just focusing on that, and especially in the first date, 9 times out of 10 you're not going to get a call back. So I recommend, after you've been on a few dates with somebody, and within 30 days at least, yes, please tell them. But anything sooner than that, why tell them something so personal if they're not going to be there?
That's a good point.
So, I mean, especially if you only go on 3 dates and then they know everything about you, and they're gone now. So what was the point?
I know some people we know, I think the approach they take is they're kind of thinking, well, he or she's going to leave me anyway, I might as well just put it up front, you know.
You should not be dating if that's your first thought.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're not thinking that you are worth so much more than just finding a nurse or finding somebody because they're there, you need to work on yourself before you start dating anybody. Because, I mean, reality is you have to love yourself before you can love somebody else.
Absolutely.
And plus, we know even from working with clients of all types that, you know, if you put too much out there, people, especially with online dating, they get into a mode where they're like looking for a reason to reject you. I mean, it can be anything. You know, okay, oh, well, I want someone who's, you know, 6 foot, you're 5'11" and a half, so you're out. Or, you know, you're out of my age range by a year, so, you know, hit the pike.
Checklists don't work.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want like, well, I want him to know that he went to school, or, you know, certain that they like dogs, that has to be.
Oh, yeah,
you gotta
like dogs.
You gotta like the dog.
Yes.
It has to be known. But other than that, I mean, if they're a little bit shorter than what you would prefer, doesn't mean that they're not going to be a good person or a good fit for you. You know, so you don't wear heels. I don't want to wear heels most of the time.
That's what we always say, you know, just kind of go by, I mean, maybe I actually got this from Damona, I think, maybe, but just go by what you feel. You know, if you feel something for that person, and maybe that person's outside of some of your checklists, that's okay, because the person with all the checklists could end up being total dud, and you might not feel anything for that person.
Yes, always go by what you feel for that person. Who cares what they look like, what their height is, and so what, you make more money than him. As long as he's financially secure and he doesn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt,
Yeah,
waiting
no
for
one
me to
wants
pay
that.
for it.
That wouldn't make anybody feel too good to be dating someone, I think, in that circumstance.
No. So, I mean, as long as they don't have that, I mean, just date anybody. If anybody asks you, go out and date them. They, even if it's not a love match, at least you may have made a new friend.
Absolutely.
That's
good
a
point.
great attitude, and I see that also with disability. If you're attracted to someone, even if that person has a disability, you got to get past that point.
Oh, yeah.
Let attraction guide you, not these checklists or these people. We meet people who have all these deal breakers,
Yeah.
and really they're just checklists.
Yeah.
True deal breakers would be like you said, where he's $100,000 in debt, or he just got off the prison bus or something.
Or he likes
those
cats.
Yeah.
well,
hey, now
you're gonna offend David
Yeah.
here.
Sorry. I'm a dog person, so.
Well, see, I'm both. But,
He is both, to be fair.
Yeah,
but that kind of leads into what I also wanted to ask you. If for someone who is not disabled but might be apprehensive but wanting to keep an open mind, what would you recommend to someone who maybe is attracted to someone who has a chronic illness or someone who is disabled? What tips would you give that person?
Have patience, because we've been rejected so many times. So have patience and keep going, even when they are pushing you away because they think you're going to leave. Keep at it, because I mean, most of our time is talking to people that aren't going to stick around. And so if somebody is wanting, you have to show that interest. And like I said, don't talk about their illness 24/7 just as much as you don't need to talk about your illness to them. Life is happening all around you. Focus on something else. So I just recommend that, especially with my illness, because it's invisible, you're not going to know that somebody has my illness if you went on a date with them, or if somebody has bipolar. You're just not going to know any of that. So don't give up on them just because they're, they have an issue. I don't like to call it an issue because it's my life. So it's what I have.
So have some kind of empathy and patience, and understand that there are
Yes.
going to be days when maybe
They don't want to do anything.
and you're used to maybe having to deal with being rejected and things like that, and just understand that it may not be personal in a way if you're like having a bad day, and take it out on maybe a little bit.
Yeah, and if they're tired or if they're in pain, Netflix is a wonderful thing. So just order in, have a Netflix date, and just hope that you don't have to do that constantly, because obviously staying in your house and not exploring would suck. But I mean, on those days, just be there for them, because I mean, they don't really want to be going through that pain, and if they're snappy with you, it's not you. It's just the pain they're going in. So just deal with it and move on. Obviously, if it's constant, then that's an issue. But
that could be the case of any relationship, really, where someone maybe takes stuff out on their partner. So that would be an issue I think every couple would have to deal with. Yeah, absolutely.
the nagging.
Yeah. No couple's ever dealt with nagging, right?
No arguing, nagging.
No arguing, nagging, yeah.
Well, one of the things we've noticed with talking to you and some of our even former guests is that a lot of it comes down to treating people like individuals. You don't pigeonhole someone based on one particular attribute. That a lot of the things that make humans attractive and you want to love and causes people to fall in love, it's very universal. And it seems to be what you're saying as well, that that the things that everybody wants and needs in a relationship, compromise, actually communicating, recognizing that maybe your partner needs a break today, they're universal to everyone.
Yeah, but communication is not really good in relationships nowadays, and that's hard. So, I mean, with somebody who has an illness, communication is key. You can't skimp on that, because if you skimp on that, then you're going to be wondering, are they in pain or are they mad at me when they're yelling? And you need to ask them. Some people are going to be forthcoming and say, it's not you, or, yeah, I do hate your face today. But tomorrow will be better.
I'm okay with hearing people hate my face that day.
As long as they love it the next day. I mean,
I have kind of a weird question as we wrap this up a little bit. But there have been times I have, we'll just be honest here, got caught checking out someone who was like a pretty woman in a wheelchair, for example. And I know, judging by the way she was looking at me, in her mind, I think she thought I was staring at her because she was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
But the reality is that was not even a factor.
Mm-hmm.
So in that situation, and it's probably the weirdest question a lot you've ever been asked probably related to this, but what should a guy do in that situation?
I mean, if you're wanting to get her number, I would just go up and talk to her. But if, they're always going to think you're looking at me because I'm in a wheelchair. That's because they're so used to that. But honestly, just go up and talk to them and just, and
Just even say, hey, I know you think I'm staring at you because of this, but I'm really...
I wouldn't even mention that.
Just say that. Okay.
I would just say, hey, you're beautiful. I just want
great.
I just want to say hi.
Because I've had guys, we've discussed this. We're talking literally about we're not even seeing the disability really at that point. We're talking about she's pretty, look at that, and then I can just tell by the look in their eye that she's thinking that we are staring because of that.
So even you thought about bringing up the whole issue, when in reality, I like what you said. Just focus on, hey, you're beautiful.
Yes.
Just ignore the rest of the stuff. Because
good point.
see her as a person.
See, I'm glad I asked this because
Yeah,
it's been weighing on my mind for multiple times.
They're so used to being asked, why are you in a wheelchair? And, when they want to tell you, they'll tell you. But when you first meet somebody, if you just want to say hey, just say hey.
Great, excellent.
I'm sure that candor would be actually refreshing because
Yes.
you actually
It would
could look
surprise
beyond
them,
that and just focus on her as a person, which is what we ultimately, all of us want.
which is a great attribute to have. So thank you for, noticing people, because most people just obviously look at, oh, well, I wonder what happened to her. And, don't ask, life happened. Life happens to everybody. Sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't.
That's a good point, yeah. And we talked a little bit earlier, if you include even any kind of mental strain or diagnosed mental illness, almost everyone has something along those lines.
Yeah,
So
I suffer from anxiety, and I take my meds and I'm good to go. But some days are a little bit better than others, especially if you're dealing with somebody who is untruthful, and that increases your anxiety.
That does that. Yes.
Well, all right. Well, we are done for today. We really want to thank you so much for coming on. This was
You're welcome.
a great discussion,
Absolutely.
and we learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else learned a lot as well. We want to plug again your book. Check out this book, Dating While Disabled. You can get it on Amazon.com.
Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Okay, great. And do you have a website where anyone can visit to find out more about you?
Yep, you can go to ChristyGoldsteinTheSexpert.com.
Okay,
Christy
great.
Goldstein, thesexpert.com. That'll be in the show notes for the podcast as well. So once again, thank you, Christy, for being
Thanks.
here. We
Thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
And we appreciate you listening. Please join us for the next episode.